He stood there, amid the swirling sea wind heavy with omens, and they mocked him as if he were just a confused old man. "Who do you think you are to stop the ship?" Those words still echoed in Elias Kane's mind, like salt rubbed into the years of sacrifice. No one remembered anymore. But he knew. He felt the storm, not through machines, but through the memories that had nearly killed him and his comrades long ago. And when the waves began to swallow the pier, he alone stood between life and death. Would anyone listen this time? No one could quite recall when Elias Kane first appeared at Charleston Harbor. He was just there, silently present, without a nameplate, without pay, without explanation. Every day, he checked the anchor hooks, wiped down life-saving equipment, reminded fishermen to secure their hatches. No one told him to do it. No one thanked him. But he did it, like a clock accustomed to its rhythm. They called him the Old Dock Watcher, sometimes with a mocking chuckle. His acts of kindness weren't seen as generosity, but as signs of an old man clinging to some last shred of purpose. The young looked at him with half pity, half suspicion. Rumors said he was once a Navy officer, a military weather expert. But no one could find a scrap of paper, a name, or anything to confirm it. All he had was a worn silver ring, etched with a symbol only a few old-timers still recognized. That morning, Elias woke earlier than usual. Something strange was stirring in him, not clear, not fully formed, but eerily familiar. A feeling he'd learned to trust, not with reason, but with survival. He didn't check weather maps or turn on the radio. He just stood still and knew something was coming, something that couldn't wait. Without hesitation, Elias went straight to the control station. 4 young officers were busy with screens, machines, charts. Elias didn't mince words. "You need to hold the ships today. There's a pressure system shifting off course. It's not right." They didn't look up right away. One laughed, lightly, but sharp enough to pierce through dignity. "Radar's clear, old man. Don't worry about things that aren't your job." Elias tightened his grip. He'd heard those exact words before, 30 years ago, during a drill that turned into a disaster. Back then, he hadn't spoken loudly enough, and 13 people didn't come back. Today, he was alone again. Before him was a new generation, trusting data, dismissing experience. They didn't know there were things radar couldn't see, didn't understand that the real storm often came from where no one was looking. Elias didn't argue. He just looked at them one last time, his gaze neither angry nor sad. Only the quiet conviction of someone who'd lost everything because he wasn't believed. He turned away, but this time he wouldn't stay silent, because the storm had truly begun. Wait a moment. I have a small request. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you love inspiring stories, and don't forget to leave a comment letting me know. Where are you watching from? And what time is it where you live? It always feels amazing to see the whole world come together just to share a meaningful moment.
Welcome to Veteran Best Stories, where the war ends, but the stories live on. From the foxholes to front porches, we honor the silent battles our veterans still fight. Subscribe and walk with us beyond the battlefield.
Elias didn't respond. Not a word of argument, not a hint of discontent. He only gave a slight nod, like someone stepping away from a pointless conversation. But his steps didn't turn back toward the small wooden shack tucked at the end of the pier. He veered in another direction, toward where the ships gently rocked in the water, ready to depart according to schedules dictated by numbers and clocks. He walked along the pier, not hurried, but purposeful. Each time he passed a ship, he paused for just a few seconds. He didn't shout, didn't interrupt. He only looked straight at the first sailor he met and said quietly enough to be heard, but firmly enough not to be ignored. "If you've ever believed the sea can speak, today's the day to listen." He repeated that phrase a few times, no more, no less, like a somber refrain. Some frowned, others gave a slight shrug, but a few eyes hesitated, those of men who'd sailed long before satellites were fitted in every cockpit, who still remembered the feel of their skin when the wind shifted out of rhythm. To them, Elias wasn't a stranger. Some had been saved by him when their boats lost steerage in a storm. Others had seen him single-handedly block floodwater from the pier by pulling a windbreak early, before the warning siren even sounded. But those same men, over the years, had begun to doubt, because no one knew who he truly was, and because this era trusted numbers precise to the decimal. Trusting instinct? It sounded romantic, but also very outdated. Elias didn't expect trust. He didn't try to persuade. He just moved from ship to ship, like a messenger delivering an unrequested dispatch. By the time the sun was overhead, he stopped at the end of the pier, where the first ships had already begun to leave. He stood still, gazing at the horizon, back straight, hands hanging at his sides, a stance more like someone performing a farewell than observing. Then, no one knew exactly when, the sky changed hue. No warning sounded, no storm signal flashed. In a fleeting moment, the wind suddenly stilled, as if the ocean held its breath. Those loading cargo below decks looked up almost in unison. That feeling, when the air grew heavier, wetter, and strangely quieter. Clouds rolled in from the southeast, dark and thick like tar. They didn't drift, they slithered, like a creature choosing its path. In less than 10 minutes, the gentle morning breezes turned into sharp, cold gusts that struck faces like a belated warning. A few ships turned back. Smaller vessels, just out of the narrow bay, began to sway violently in cross waves. On shore, the young dock workers abruptly stopped. Silence spread like an oil slick, drowning out the usual harbor sounds, horns, engines, voices calling out. In their place was the wind, harsh, biting, and fiercely resolute. Elias still stood there, unhurried, unpanicked, silent. But in his eyes, that stillness was an entire battle unfolding. He took no joy in his foresight proving true, only a pang in his chest, as sharp as every time old memories resurfaced. Part of him wanted to rush out, as he had so many times before. But another part felt the bitter sting of knowing that even if he'd spoken sooner, they still wouldn't have listened. And now 3 ships, small, low, and far, were still out at sea. The storm came without a name. It bore no signal from satellite stations, no warning on weather reports, no chance for people to prepare by the usual playbook. It struck like a fist against the calm sea. Cold, sudden, and unrelenting. The wind howled from every direction, roaring as if the ocean sought to cast off everything that didn't belong. Anchor ropes stretched taut, trembling violently before snapping with cracks as sharp as breaking bones. Ships collided in the swirling waters, each impact like a hammer against the pier, shaking the wet concrete foundation. And amid the chaos, Elias appeared, without warning, without anyone calling for him. He moved with the reflex of someone who'd survived nature's worst. Age was no barrier. His eyes were fixed on the east, where the McCarthy family's boat was struggling, its bow twisted off course by the wind, its side swamped in freezing water. No one could stop him. Elias raced across the slick pier, each step heavy as stone, but never slow. He grabbed a lifeline from the nearest rescue station, wrapping it tightly around his waist like an old habit that had never left him. His hands, though weathered and calloused, worked as if he were still 30, steady, decisive, without a tremble. A young sailor, David Juneau, on duty that day, stood stunned as Elias charged out. Every protocol said civilians weren't to interfere in emergencies, and Elias, legally, wasn't on any harbor personnel list. But David didn't have time to stop him, and didn't truly dare. Something in the way Elias ran made David freeze in place. Elias didn't let anyone intervene. He didn't need orders. His steps were guided by survival, a force he'd once wielded in storms long past, where all communication failed, leaving only instinct and discipline. When the rope was thrown the first time, it slipped from the man's hands on the boat. Elias pulled it back, looped it again, secured it the second time, and this time it held. He braced himself, planting his feet against the concrete, using every ounce of his weight and muscle memory to keep the rope from being torn away by the water. The first to reach shore was a child, shivering, soaked, and pale. Then another, and then the last, a brown-haired girl, screaming not from fear, but from the cold. Elias took each small hand, holding tight, passing them to those waiting behind, as if handing over his own life with every pull. The last two adults, the father and older brother, had to cling to the rope themselves, inching through waves crashing waist-high. Elias never took his eyes off them, ready to dive in if either strayed from the line. Finally, they all made it to shore, one by one, trembling, stumbling, but alive. Elias didn't sit down immediately. He turned to look at the boat, now half submerged by the waves. Only when he was certain no one was left behind did he drop to his knees. Not from exhaustion, but because his old legs were finally allowed to breathe. The nameless storm lasted less than an hour, but it was enough to demolish part of the western pier, cripple the harbor's electronics, and silence those who had once mocked Elias Kane for a long, long time. And then, like all storms, it passed, leaving behind one thing intact, a lifeline still tied around the waist of an old man no one quite remembered. But today, the harbor owed him one thing: life. Dear audience, take a moment to relax or grab a glass of water, then keep listening to the story. There are still surprises ahead. Comment 1 if you're enjoying the story, so we know you're still with us. At Charleston's military hospital, the air was thick with the scent of antiseptic, and the stillness of lives paused for recovery. In room 217, Elias lay motionless on a bed draped in white sheets. His eyes closed as if sleep, absent for years, had finally come to visit. His sweat-soaked hair was disheveled, his gaunt hands still tightly wrapped around a lifeline rope, damp with seawater. The doctors worked in silence, swift but careful. As they unwound the rope from his waist, a young nurse noticed the silver ring on the old man's finger. Not because it was striking, but because the symbol etched on it made her pause. A curved line intertwined with a character, simple yet solemn. Like a code only those who belonged to another world could understand. Soon after, the door opened. A tall man with silver hair and a stern demeanor entered, his hesitation rare for someone who once held high military rank. On the nameplate loosely pinned to his chest was the inscription, "Langston, U.S. Navy, Return." He had come to Charleston for a symposium on meteorological applications in naval defense, but fate led him here. Not by orders, but by a memory that had never been closed. His gaze settled on Elias's hand. The silver ring lay there, silent as a sentinel guarding a long-forgotten truth. He didn't need to check, didn't need to ask. He knew, because he had personally given that ring to 7 men, 6 of whom never returned. And the 7th vanished along with every report, every photograph, and the belief that the mission had ever existed. Langston stepped forward, quietly sitting by the bedside. In that moment, he was no longer a general or a speaker, but merely an old comrade, a living witness to a dark chapter in naval history no one was permitted to mention. He didn't touch Elias. He only looked. His gaze carried no pity, but a debt never named. "Only 7 men wore this ring," he said, his voice low like the sea breeze at night. 6 gave their lives. The 7th went missing on the final day of the operation. No one thought Elias could hear, but as if the memory recognized a familiar voice, his eyes slowly opened. His gaze was still clouded with exhaustion, but deep within was something unmistakable, the alertness of a man who had never truly slept. He wasn't surprised to see Langston. No particular expression crossed his face, just a single sentence, hoarse, slow, as if pulled from a very deep place. "We didn't go missing. We were erased." The words didn't ring loudly, but they made the air in the room pause for a moment. Langston bowed his head. That answer needed no explanation. He understood, and he knew. This was the moment he could no longer stay silent. Outside, the rain fell softly on the hospital's eaves. Each drop tapped on the glass, stirring the dust of a story long buried. And in that white room, 2 men, one who once gave orders, one who saved hundreds of lives, sat together, not to recount the past, but to begin restoring its truth. In the days following the storm, while Charleston Harbor was still mending the open wounds on its piers, General Langston didn't return to Washington as planned. He stayed, quietly sifting through military records thought to be sealed forever. It wasn't an easy task, not just because of the system's complexity, but because he was trying to reclaim a truth he himself had been forced to forget. At a high-security Navy archive in Norfolk, he uncovered a thin document marked "Redacted," with black lines obscuring nearly every page. But amid the patchy black and white, one passage remained intact. "Kane, Elias R., Chief Meteorological Coordinator, Operation Tempest Shield. A single line, but enough to blow away all doubt. Elias had existed in that role, had been indispensable in a classified mission, had helped avert a storm that could have sunk a ship carrying nearly 900 Marines in the Okinawa seas. But what followed was a cold slap from the very system he had served. Elias's entire record was withdrawn and erased from the database. His title was revoked. No discharge process took place. No certificate. No pension. No explanation. Elias, along with the 6 comrades who perished in the operation, vanished from all official records, as if they had never existed. Not because they failed, but because they succeeded in a place no one was allowed to know. Langston, who had once believed in the inherent fairness of the system, now felt like a silent accomplice. And he understood that if the truth had a chance to speak, this was the moment. Soon after, a video began spreading across social media. Grainy footage from a harbor security camera captured an old man, Elias, wrapping a cable around himself, charging into the storm to save a fisherman's family. The video wasn't staged. No background music, just the howl of the wind and the image of an elderly figure battling the line between life and death. The title was simple: The Nameless Man Who Saved Charleston Harbor. But it was that simplicity that made it impossible to look away. Over 1 million views in the first 2 days. Thousands of comments, but not fleeting praise. People asked, "Who is he?" And slowly, old stories surfaced. Fishermen who'd been guided by Elias through storms. People who'd heard his warnings before radars flashed red. Veterans who recalled the symbol on his silver ring. And gradually, the name Elias Kane was no longer unknown. Before the old wooden shack where Elias still lived, candles began appearing each evening. No one organized it. No one campaigned. One person lit a candle, another followed. A small flag was planted in a crack in the stone by the doorstep. An old, weathered flag, likely taken from someone's keepsake box from their service days. Then, handwritten letters arrived from all over: San Diego, Pensacola, Bangor, even a radar station in Alaska. Belated apologies, heartfelt thanks, lines written in the trembling script of old soldiers: "We haven't forgotten." Elias didn't read them all. He didn't live for recognition. But in his solemn eyes, something had softened. Not satisfaction, but a kind of relief, as if the suitcase of memories he'd carried for years could finally be set down, if only for a moment. Justice sometimes doesn't come from courtrooms or golden plaques. It comes from hands lighting candles in silence, from a video without music, from a spread no one orchestrated, but everyone needed to witness. That morning, Charleston Harbor was quieter than usual. No ship horns echoed from the open sea, no clatter of cranes, no engines starting. Only the gentle breeze rustling through the masts, flying flags at half-mast, and the steady footsteps of hundreds gathering at the eastern pier, where an unprecedented ceremony in the city's history was being prepared. There were no honor guards, no escort vehicles, no vibrant banners, just a simple wooden platform, hastily built by the hands of fishermen Elias had once helped. On it, a small wooden box rested in the center, containing a prestigious honor the U.S. Navy reserved for those who sacrificed in silence during classified missions. General Langston, in a solemn uniform, slowly ascended the platform. His face couldn't hide the emotion, not of a man giving a speech, but of one finally doing right by someone long forgotten. He didn't speak at length. No cliched praise was needed. He only bowed his head, lifted the box with both hands, and turned toward the man in the front row. Silver hair, shoulders draped in the old faded gray coat, and eyes as clear as the sea on a calm day. Elias Kane didn't stand. He didn't reach out. He only leaned forward, looking at the box, then at the man before him. In that moment, between the two men, there were no ranks, no politics, no history, only truth. And that truth, Elias chose to refuse. He gently pushed the box back, not with coldness, but as if returning something that was never needed. "I don't need a medal," he said, soft enough not to overpower the wind, but clear enough for all to hear. "I just need people to listen." No one reacted immediately. The entire pier sank into silence, not out of shock, but because in each person's heart, what Elias said rang like a slow, resonant bell. Honor wasn't something bestowed. It was something lived. That day, the Charleston City Council passed an unprecedented resolution. The Eastern Pier, where Elias had saved the McCarthy family and warned of a storm no one believed, was renamed Elias Point. No press conference, no countdown, just a brass plaque fastened with hand-driven nails at the base of an anchor post. Etched forever were the words, "For the man who saved hundreds of lives, with bare hands, a rope, and a memory no one recalled." Elias's story spread beyond Charleston, not at the speed of news, but with the pulse of human hearts. Schools taught students their first lesson about respecting experience. Naval training centers incorporated the Kane Protocol into a field meteorology curricula as a testament to battlefield intuition and observation beyond machines. Young fishermen, each storm season, spoke his name as part of a ritual before setting sail. Those who once doubted him now passed down the story of the old dock watcher as a living legend, not to worship, but to learn from. Elias said nothing about it all. He still lived in the small shack by the water's edge, still woke early, still cleaned anchor hooks, and reminded the young to check their hatches. But people noticed that sometimes he paused for a long time before the brass plaque at Elias Point, not to admire his name, but perhaps just to be sure. This time, silence was no longer oblivion. Because what made people remember Elias wasn't his heroism in a single stormy day. It was the steadfastness of a man who refused to step back, even when erased from collective memory. A man who chose silence for nearly 3 decades, not out of resignation, but because he believed the truth would speak for itself if he lived true to it and honor. It was never in the medal. It was in the eyes of the survivors looking at him with a gratitude no words could capture. The story of Elias Kane is not just the journey of a forgotten veteran, but a profound reminder that true value lies not in the dazzling things people see, but in the silent actions no one witnesses. There are those who dedicate their lives to keeping an oath, to protecting others without needing a word of recognition. And sometimes, all they need is simply for someone to listen, to trust, and to remember. If you've ever had a loved one, a friend, or even yourself as part of those forgotten moments, know that you are not alone. Thank you for following this story. If it touched you, please leave a comment, share your thoughts, or send a tribute to a veteran you know. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and share this video to spread healing stories like this to more people. Because sometimes, just one share is a way to keep a memory from being erased.